Welcome back and thank you very much for staying with us. This is Politics Tonight, where we dig beyond the headlines. And now to our interview with the guest of the day. I am joined by the Deputy Spokesperson of the House of Representatives, Honorable Philip Agbese, for discussion on President Bola Tinubu's address and promised relief packages to Nigerians. Thank you so much for joining us, Honorable.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So let's start with your assessment of the President's national broadcast. What's your view about this?
Well, for us in the Parliament, the speech was quite reassuring. And at another end, it was also a sense of empathy for the suffering Nigerian masses. I must also make it very clear that the reaction of the president to the suffering of the Nigerian masses is as a result, is a product of a legislative issue deliberated by the House of Representatives. And we are happy that we have a president who is living up to the talk, and things are happening quickly to benefit the people and to make sure that the country is not made to suffer more than what the subsidy, the presence of subsidy is supposed to do to us. So I want to join every other Nigeria, and it is the position of the House of Representatives that the president is on track, and will continue to monitor activities as far as the provision of palliatives is concerned.
Right. So what impact do you think such addresses by Nigerian leaders will have on the relationship between the government and the citizens?
Sorry, please come again. I didn't get you well.
What impact do you think such addresses by Nigerian leaders will have on the relationship between the government and the citizens?
I can't really hear you, probably because of the audio here.
All right, let me repeat myself. I asked that what impact do you think such addresses by Nigerian leaders will have on the relationship between the government and the citizens? Did you get that?
Oh. Yes. Okay, yes. You see, in time past, there was a time in the country that things were not actually in place, and the Nigerians were actually looking for their president to talk to them. The youth had to, demonstrate and protest on the street just to hear from their leader. What that means is that because it is a country and we have a leadership in place, to govern the country, it is always good that we hear from our leaders. Like in the House of Representatives, it is very normal. We hear from the Speaker regularly, which gives us that assurance that, yes, it is a house that is being led by someone. And for a country, like Nigeria, it is only important that from time to time, our leaders should come out to talk to us. And that is exactly what the president has done. It is in line with our legislative agenda in the National Assembly that leadership should be consultative in nature, and that we should continue to engage the people, we should continue to engage the masses. And that is why at the moment we are on recess, we are to be back to our various constituencies to interact with the people and return back to Abuja with their feelings. And the question of fuel subsidy removal today, it is one, feeling that needs no explanation for anybody to really understand, because the pains, the sufferings are everywhere. Our constituents are feeling it, and they've been talking to us. And it was on that basis that the House of Representatives resolved, to send certain messages to Mr. President. And they thank God for the kind of president that we have today. In less than 30 days, he has responded to the cry of the people. We want to see more of that. We want to see more addresses from Mr. President. We want to see more of engagement, not just between Mr. President and the Nigerian masses, and even between the Nigerian people and the House of Representatives. And that is why the Speaker, His Excellency Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, has christened the 10th National Assembly's House of Representatives as the People's Parliament, a parliament that will continue to engage more with the masses. A parliament that will be alive to its duties and responsibilities, not just in terms of bills and motions on the floor of the House, but one that will engage stakeholders, with a feedback mechanism to make sure that on a very periodic level, we get the feelings of the people and we report back to them. So we want to encourage Mr. President to continue in this direction, because we in the National Assembly, we in the 10th House of Representatives, we believe in what he has done. We'll continue to encourage him to do more in this direction.
All right, so just like you rightly pointed out, many people say this has shown President Tinubu as a listening leader and a president that will communicate. So do you believe this is who he is, or just because his administration is still new?
Well, there is a saying in African palace that the chick that will grow into a cock, you get to see it, from the infant stage. And that is exactly what the president has demonstrated. He's not new in this sector. He's not new to governance. He was very successful in his business engagement before coming into government. And with his antecedents in Lagos, we have seen clearly that, yes, truly, today, Nigerians have a leader they can be proud of. We in the National Assembly, we are doing all within our powers to collaborate with him to equally make sure that individually and collectively we all deliver on our campaign promises. And I believe for the kind of character that the president is, which he has been over a long period of time since many of us got in contact with him, it's very clear that the president is not going to shift grounds any time soon. This is just who he is, and he must continue in this direction. In the first instance, we all witnessed what transpired across the country in February when the presidential and National Assembly elections took place across the country. It wasn't an easy one. It took resilience. It took the commitment of the Nigerian people, their devotion and dedication to the cause of democracy, to elect Mr. President, as their president. The people believe in him, and I don't see a president that is in a hurry to fail the Nigerian masses, or a president that wants to change simply because he's the president today. His engagement with the National Assembly has equally shown that, yes, he's a listening leader. He's ready to cooperate with the other arms of government for us to move the country forward. So for us, I think it is not yet time for celebration, but from every indication, we can see that, yes, there's celebration ahead of us.
All right. So what aspects of the relief packages announced by the president do you consider as the most critical for the country at the moment?
Yes, from the speech we listened to, prior to the speech yesterday, in the House, we passed some resolutions. We made some recommendations to Mr. President. We mentioned the issue of interventions in transportation. We advised that the manufacturing industry should be rejigged and more money into the economy. And these are exactly what Mr. President has addressed in his speech. So they are all very important, because at the moment, transportation tends to hold the key to the other problems that we have in the country today, because everywhere in the country there seems to be the prices of goods seem to be on the high, and people are unable to afford them. Again, Mr. President in his speech mentioned the issue of considering increments in salaries for civil servants and other categories of workers. We have seen that in the public sector, where we've seen even banks, transportation companies increasing staff salaries, and we believe and want to ask that this should go across board. And on this note, we also want to plead with the Nigerian Labour Congress to show some level of understanding with the government, so that we can all work together as stakeholders to address these issues. It's not going to be a kind of rocket science, because we know that the removal of fuel subsidy is one of the most courageous things for anybody to do as a leader of this country. The people involved in the theft of resources, meant for everybody in the country, in the first instance, are very powerful individuals, and they are going to do everything possible to frustrate the government from delivering on the gains that should ordinarily come to us as a result of the removal of fuel subsidy. Having said that, those challenges will be there, we understand, but again, as a people and as a country, we have to pay the price, which is going to be very temporary. And this brings us to some of the resolutions of the 10th Assembly that we are going to monitor closely the distribution of these palliatives, especially in areas where the money will go into enhancing agriculture for improved food production and availability of food in the country. Mr. President equally talked about spending part of the money on the construction of some of the rural roads to assist farmers in getting their produce from the farms to the urban centers where they can sell these things. So as a house, we have resolved to monitor and carry out our oversight functions to ensure that the funds we are saving from the removal of fuel subsidy goes back into helping the people and for us to collectively build the country as one.
All right, so let me continue from where you stopped. President Tinubu says government has earmarked 100 billion naira to purchase 3,000 20-seater buses to provide affordable transportation. So how long do you think this can go in solving transportation challenges in the country?
Yes, if we are able to address the issue of transportation, I believe that will go a long way in helping to ameliorate the sufferings of the masses, because transportation is a very big problem for everybody, including members of the National Assembly. Yes, having said so, we all know the importance of transportation, and if we're able to reduce the cost of movement for people who provide services, it will definitely go a long way to improve the economy. And I believe that some of these buses will also have alternative energy sources, not necessarily PMS, but CNG and other alternatives. So if we provide that, and not just buses, I think we should also go back to see how to make good use of the railway services that the past administration had provided for the citizens, and for places like Abuja, Kaduna, that people have not been able to use the rail, we have to bring them back as quickly as possible. And this is exactly why we have committees in the National Assembly that are going to wake up to some of these responsibilities and challenges to ensure that the MDAs are equally acting in tandem with what Mr. President has directed and has instructed in his speech as part of his policies to move the country forward.
All right, so let me also ask you this. How workable is the President's promise of 500 billion naira for all year-round farming on 500,000 hectares of land?
Yes, I don't really know how they intend to go about that, but as a house, we have resolved to watch and see how they go about it, because the policy direction of the current administration is very clear, not just on the basis of fuel subsidy removal or the current feelings of the masses as a result of the pains. So we as a house, we have resolved, to give them our cooperation. We also, as a parliament, believe in agriculture. It is part of our individual campaign manifestos. So we are going to be watching and monitoring to see how well they execute that.
The president also mentioned that 125 billion naira will be allocated to the micro, small and medium-scale enterprises and the informal sector, which are the drivers of economic growth. How feasible is this?
Yes, some of these things have been done in the past. We have the agencies like the Small and Medium Enterprise Development Agency and other organizations, both government and private organizations. It is expected naturally that they will wake up to address their mandate And in doing so, of course, the president has clearly stated that funds will be provided for them. So we want to see how far this can go. But we believe as a parliament that it is very important, especially for the young, for young Nigerians, to benefit from these small, medium enterprises. And I think we should give the president the benefit of the doubt that he will do exactly what he has said he is going to do.
So, Honorable, considering the monumental failure recorded by the Anchor Borrowers Program, what do you think can be done to ensure that the allocation for small businesses does not suffer same fate?
Yes, there was everything wrong with the Anchor Borrowers scheme of the last administration. And I think that is exactly why the former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria is still being held by the State Security Service, to provide answers to some of these things. Our advice as a parliament is that there should be more transparency and accountability in the conduct of government businesses. And the executive should always be willing to answer questions from the Nigerian people. They should also be willing to respond to questions from the parliament. Because in the past, some of the persons who were saddled with the responsibilities of manning these agencies, even when the Ninth Assembly attempted, to call them to order, they refused to honor the parliament. But today we see a good working relationship between the National Assembly and the executive. So if members of the executive, those who are coming on board as ministers and heads of agencies, if they adhere strictly to the Mr. President doctrine and principle of cooperation between the executive and the parliament, I know very well that things will be far better than what it used to be in the past. So it is our hope in the House of Representatives that the executive will accord us all the necessary cooperation as we also extend our collaboration to them to make sure that things get better for the citizen.
All right. So if you would agree with me that in this country, we have always had fantastic policies, but implementation remains a big challenge. Now, the president has said the federal government is working closely with state and local governments to implement interventions for citizens. How do we ensure implementation of this?
Well, the problem, like we have all agreed, it has never been the absence of laws in the country. It is a question of how well we implement the laws that are available in the country. I've said this before, that we don't even need new laws as far as this country is concerned, because the existing laws in the country have not been in terms of implementation, in terms of observance and adherence. We have not been able to score up to 20-30%. So for us in the parliament, we strongly believe that laws are not for fun. So we want to see that our laws are respected. If our laws are respected, there's no way things will not be better as far as this country is concerned. And that is why we must give it to Mr. President that he's a listening one. He chose not to remain in the villa, to cocoon himself, away from the Nigerian people. The people were crying, and he has yielded, to their cries. We want to see more of that. We want to see, a president that is obeying, the laws of the land. A president who understands that he is a servant of the masses. He's a servant of the Nigerian people. And I believe that with that which Mr. President has shown, the Nigerian people will also be moved, to support him to do better. So in the days ahead, I see quite a lot of good, for us as a country if Mr. President continues in this direction, and we also continue in that in the direction which the National Assembly has already set itself.
Honorable, earlier you talked about the need for transparency to ensure success of the plans highlighted by the president. How do you think government can ensure this?
the presence of the Economics and Financial Crimes Commission, the ICPC, or the law enforcement agencies in reality have not in any way helped to ensure that there's transparency in governance. Because these agencies have been with us for over 2 decades now, and nothing, and that has not stopped, the kind of looting we witnessed in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. It didn't stop the kind of looting we witnessed in the central bank just recently. So I want to say that the first thing for us to do is to ensure that we bring on board men and women of proven track record and integrity, who on their own have their integrity, their image, and their family names to protect. It is after getting the right heads that we can now go a step further to now begin to talk about transparency and to engage the tools that have been put in place to ensure that there is transparency in governance. Again, in the past, we've heard things like the body language of a certain leader promoting corruption and all of that. And, in the past administration, the major problem was that everybody engaged by that administration became bigger than the administration to the extent that when they engaged people, they failed to fire these persons when, they break our laws. We saw it in the past. Very mighty people, involved in bribery allegations, in clear cases where, of course, it became obvious that a prima facie case was established against them. Morality was thrown to the dogs. We didn't see a government acting on that. So my advice to Mr. President is that as we are starting on a new note, he should ensure that every single Nigeria, caught dipping his or her fingers into the public purse is punished immediately and accordingly in line with the laws of the land. If we do this...
Thank you so much, Honorable Philip Agbese. I've been speaking with the Deputy Spokesperson of the House of Representatives. Honorable Philip, thank you so much for coming on the program tonight as we focus on President Bola Tinubu's address and the promised relief packages to Nigerians. Thank you so much for your contribution on the program tonight. Thank you so much. And thank you very much for watching. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But the conversation continues from here. Get in touch with us on Twitter.